Memorial Day isn't just the unofficial start of summer, it's a day to remember those who made possible all the things we take for granted. Welcome to Sharpening Arrows, where we train teens to think biblically about life and politics. I'm your host, Victor Jakes. Now, if you want to watch, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/at sharpening arrows, youtube.com/at sharpening arrows. Parents, I encourage you to listen to this podcast with your teens and preteens. We want to walk alongside them and discuss the issues of the day. We want to equip our children to respond to the best arguments of the other side, not pretend those arguments don't exist. We want to sharpen our arrows. I'm recording this on Memorial Day, and I hope you've had a wonderful day and weekend. And I want to take today's show and slow down and think about what this day means and stands for. It's easy to think of it as a day off. You know, we have these days throughout the year, and it's like, oh, a 3-day weekend. This is so nice. What are we celebrating? A 3-day weekend, right? That's why we have these things. It's also easy to think of it as the beginning of summer vacation, but it's much more than that. And when we start, I want to start with a pause point. That's another unique thing about this podcast. Parents, I encourage you to actually stop the podcast and discuss these questions with your teen or preteen. Remember, you are your children's most important teacher. So let's start with this question. What's the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day? And I want you to think about the grade 8 questions. Remember, those are the questions we put in our mental toolbox to help us dissect policy issues, but they also apply to life. And question 5 is, what do you mean by that? And that's all we're doing here. And I think sometimes, especially as you are growing up, you realize that everyone else around you seems to know something. And so it feels kind of embarrassing or awkward to ask something that you just aren't quite sure about. But I encourage you to do that because that's how you learn and that's how you grow. And you'll often discover that there are others who have the same question, but just didn't have the courage to speak up. And so it's easy to kind of get Memorial Day and Veterans Day confused or not understand the distinction because they are both honoring service members. Obviously, Memorial Day is in May and Veterans Day is on November 11th, but they have distinct purposes. This is from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And it says many people confuse Memorial Day and Veterans Day. See, you aren't alone. Ask the question that comes to mind. Memorial Day is a day for remembering and honoring military personnel who died in the service of their country, particularly those who died in battle or as the result of wounds sustained in battle. While those who died are also remembered, Veterans Day is a day set aside to thank and honor all those who served honorably in the military in wartime or peacetime. In fact, Veterans Day is largely intended to thank living veterans for their service, whereas Memorial Day, we are taking time to remember those who have given their lives that the nation might live. This makes Memorial Day much more meaningful and very important. Now, I want you to think about this phrase. This comes from Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. Those who gave their lives that the nation might live. That brings us to another pause point. What difference does it make what country you are from? Our country's interchangeable. Now, it's going to be a little bit of a different episode today, but normally what we do is we take an issue and we dissect it and we start with the wrong side and we looked at the best arguments for the wrong ideas. We are going to do that, but most of the show is actually not going to be this. But I actually want to dig into this question about what difference does it make what country you are from, because there is a narrative out there in the popular culture that what defines you is you as an individual. All right, so let's make that argument. Well, you see, it doesn't matter what country you're from. It's actually just random. You were randomly born into a country. You didn't have any choice in the matter. You couldn't decide. You didn't get a vote. You just were. You were part of that country. And you can actually leave that country and become part of a different country more to your liking. You see, your loyalty is merely a matter of chance. What matters is who you are as an individual, the thing that defines you, the dominant factor in your life, the thing that supersedes everything else is what you think about yourself as an individual. Who you are in your mind, that's what matters. That's what makes you, you. All right, let's have a pause point. Which of the great 8 questions would you use in response to this argument? And as a reminder, here are the great 8 questions. Question 1, what happens next? Question 2, has this been tried before? Question 3, is there a principle involved? Question 4, what are the trade-offs? Question 5, what do you mean by that? Question 6, is an appeal to emotion or logic? Question 7, am I focused on the speaker or the argument? And question 8, what does the Bible say? Okay, so just a reminder, the question is, does it matter what country you are from? Should you feel a particular loyalty to a certain country? And some people will simply say no, or they'll kind of rank, the country, and it'll be ranked way down at the bottom of the things that really matter about a person. And if you go back into that argument, you will find a lot of things that are true. It is true that you did not choose your birth country. God put you in a country that you had no choice over. It's also true that you can leave and become part of another country. The settlers who came over here, they didn't initially think they were leaving England and other places in Europe, but they chose to break away. There are lots of people who came over as immigrants later on and had children. Many people have immigrated to America in search of a better life. All right, so those things are true. And I don't want to say that they aren't, because remember, the best arguments that are false are going to have elements of truth. They aren't just going to be so completely out there, because they wouldn't be a very good argument if they were so obviously false. So we have these elements of truth, but now let's go into the grade 8. And remember, if I don't select the question that you chose, doesn't mean you were wrong. There's lots of ways to attack arguments. I'm going to start with question 3, and we're going to go to question 1. Question 3 is there a principle involved? And this is really important because the popular culture, you see this most clearly with the transgender movement. The popular culture says, you are who you decide you are. It's it. That's it. It's in your mind. In fact, you're so much of an individual that you can imagine yourself to be the opposite sex, and that makes you the opposite sex. You are just an atomized individual wandering around out there, occasionally bumping into other atomized individuals. Okay, that's kind of the principle, the argument underneath the surface here. But here's the truth. God did make you as an individual with individual gifts and talents and interests, but you were also created for community. You were put in a family. You have a local community. You may have a church community. And you also have a country. The country is not some part of you that can just be pushed aside. It is a defining part of who you are. Perhaps not the defining part, but a defining part. Your language, your cultures, the customs, the system of government that you are used to, those things help make you you. Even if you leave your country, your past citizenship certainly influences you. Think about this with the word traitor. Why is traitor such a serious charge? Because we have an ingrained sense that you're not just an individual, you're an individual that's part of a larger community, that's part of a country. And for someone to reject that, to be a traitor, is saying, oh, I'm rejecting this fundamental thing about me, and that's a big deal. And it's a big deal to everyone else, Because the other part of this idea that, oh, I'm just an atomized individual, the only thing that matters is what I think, is that that's not true. Countries exist to protect people. You are not just an individual with rights, you are an individual with obligations. When you are part of a country, the country simply cannot function if everyone just thinks about themselves. There has to be something that we come together and hold in common. The foundational role of government is the common defense. If a government fails at that, its people die or become assimilated into another group of people. All right, so this is what brings us into question one of what happens next. So we have this principle of, does it matter if you are part of a country or are you just an individual unassociated with community? If everyone starts to think like that, if everyone starts seeing themselves just as an individual, primarily and focused solely on what brings them pleasure as an individual, the country will slowly, or perhaps quickly, come apart. And then all of those liberties, all of those freedoms that we take for granted too often here in the United States of America, they will quickly fade away. If you look around the world, people around the world do not enjoy freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, things that we just take for granted here in the United States. If everyone starts to think of themselves as, oh, I'm just an individual, yes, they will enjoy the rights that so many servicemen and women have died to protect, but they will destroy the foundation of those rights for the future generations. And this is why patriotism and national symbols like a flag are so important. People need something to unify around, to unify together, to have a common history that they can, a common narrative that they can say, this is where we came from. This is where our country came from, the country that we are a part of by birth or by choice. And this is how our country has changed and grown. And this is our country's accomplishments. And so if you want to destroy a country, you're going to go in and you're going to undermine patriotism. You're going to undermine national heroes. You're going to paint the country as evil. And this is what the political left has been doing for decades. And the reason is they want to destroy the foundation of the country in order to remake it. All right, that was a bit of an aside, but I think it's an important one as we think about Memorial Day. And let's get back to thinking about the sacrifices that people have made. Let's have a pause point. How many people have died defending America? What do you think? Well, the Department of Veterans Affairs puts the number at over 1 million people, including 400,000 in World War II, over 110,000 in World War I, and 380,000 in the Civil War, and another 130,000 from the Confederacy in the Civil War. And so, again, those rights that we enjoy here, they didn't just appear. They had to be fought for. There's an army cadence, and I won't sing it for you because I don't want to embarrass my children too much, but it goes like this. Some say freedom is free. As for me, I disagree. I say freedom is won by the barrel of a gun. And that is absolutely true. And again, it's so easy to lose sight of that in the United States because, thank the Lord, violence on a civilizational scale is not a normal part of life. We have elections. We have peaceful transitions of power. But those things only exist. They rest on the foundation of the fact that so many people have given their lives for our country, that they have said, this country, these rights are worth fighting and dying for. And without their sacrifice, we would not have that. We would not be enjoying that here today. And so we should be profoundly grateful for that. All right, another pause point. What percentage of U.S. military deaths have been male? What do you think? According to the Substack, the Newso letter, it's over 99%. Wow. Talk about disparity. But that's how it should be. Because men and women are not the same. Men should be using their strength to protect women, children, the elderly, those who cannot defend themselves. And so it's appropriate that men are the ones who go primarily and fight and die for the country. That's how it should be. All right, before we continue, let me tell you about a terrific book, especially for teens. It's called Memory Burn by J.T. Lindstrom. It's set in a dystopian future where AI definitely hasn't improved the world. Those rights we take for granted do not exist in the world of Memory Burn. It has terrific action sequences and memorable characters like Elias Vane. He's a smuggler who takes a no questions asked job that, you guessed it, leads to lots of questions, especially about his past. You see, the AI that runs the world has optimized humans by erasing their memories. I definitely stayed up way too late one night finishing this book. That's a bad thing to do when you're an old man. And both of my older kids have really enjoyed reading Memory Burn. Check it out today. All right, I want to end today's show with just reading the those million plus people who've died. Reading the Medal of Honor citations from two of them, just to give you a sense of what has been sacrificed for our country, for America. This is the account of a 22-year-old, so not that much older than the teens listening here, in 1969. Specialist 4 Leonard Alvarado distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity, above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a rifleman with Company D, 2nd Battalion, 12th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division, Air Mobile, during combat operations against an armed enemy during the Vietnam War. On that day, Alvarado and a small reaction force moved through dense jungle en route to a beleaguered friendly platoon. Specialist 4 Alvarado detected enemy movement and opened fire. Despite his quick reaction, Alvarado and his comrades were soon pinned down by the hostile force that blocked the path to the trapped platoon. So just think about that. You're being fired upon. There's a platoon of your soldiers out there. Your life is in danger. What would you do? What would you feel? Well, let's have a pause point and just ask. How would you feel if someone was shooting at you to die, to kill you? What would you do? Well, Alvarado quickly moved forward through the hostile machine gun fire in order to engage the enemy troops. Suddenly, an enemy grenade exploded nearby, wounding and momentarily stunning him. So he's not just being fired upon, he gets hit with a grenade. Retaliating immediately, he killed the grenadier, just as another enemy barrage wounded him again. Alvarado crawled forward through the bullets to pull several comrades back within the hastily formed perimeter. Realizing his element needed to break away from the hostile force, Alvarado began maneuvering forward alone. Though repeatedly thrown to the ground by exploding satchel charges, he continued advancing and firing, silencing several emplacements, including one enemy machine gun position. From his dangerous forward position, he persistently laid suppressive fire on the hostile forces. After the enemy troops had broken contact, his comrades discovered that he had succumbed to his wounds. There is someone who is not thinking about his rights. He's thinking about those around him and what he can do to protect them. His extraordinary heroism and selflessness at the cost of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. Wow. 22 years old. This is Travis Atkins in 2007 in Iraq. While manning a static observation post in a town in Iraq, Staff Sergeant Atkins was notified that 4 suspicious individuals walking in 2 pairs were crossing an intersection not far from his position. Staff Sergeant Atkins immediately moved his squad to interdict the individuals. One of the individuals began behaving erratically, prompting Staff Sergeant Atkins to disembark from his patrol vehicle and approach to conduct a search. Both individuals responded belligerently towards Staff Sergeant Atkins, who then engaged the individual he had intended to search in hand-to-hand combat. Staff Sergeant Atkins tried to wrestle the insurgent's arms behind his back. When he noticed the insurgent was reaching for something under his clothes, Staff Sergeant Atkins immediately wrapped him in a bear hug and threw him to the ground, away from his fellow soldiers. Atkins maintained his hold on the insurgent, placing his body on top of him, further sheltering his patrol. With Atkins on top of him, the insurgent detonated a bomb strapped to his body, killing Atkins. Staff Sergeant Atkins acted with complete disregard for his own safety. In this critical and selfless act of valor, Staff Sergeant Atkins saved the lives of 3 other soldiers who were with him and gallantly gave his life for his country. Staff Sergeant Atkins' undaunted courage, warrior spirit, and steadfast devotion to duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, 2nd Brigade Combat Team in the United States Army. Wow. We are here today because of men like Alvarado and Atkins, men who gave their lives for this country. Here's how Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address put it. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they have, thus far, so nobly carried on. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and this government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So let's end with this as a pause point. Remembering those who died so that you can have the privilege of living in the United States of America. What is something that you should do differently? What is something that you should dedicate your life towards? May we all work to ensure that they have not died in vain. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube and leave us a 5-star review. Be courageous like Charlie, stay sharp, and give God the glory. I'll see you next time.